Hey, what's up? Good afternoon. I hope your Sunday is good. I'm not real sure that mine could be a whole lot better. My whole life is brand new. The way I look at things, completely different. My attitude in so many areas has changed and is changing. Many times I have wished that I could put into words and really capture the whole story, really the whole story from start to finish of God's work in my life. I've said this before, but my memory, God bless me, man, with an awesome memory. But if I'm not careful, I get lost in those memories, and sometimes it's easy to get lost in a memory and miss what's going on right now. So God has really helped me with that. It's so important that we be careful about the thoughts that we entertain in our mind. 90% of our battle is in our mind. And so many times we get caught by things unaware, simply because we don't capture the thoughts before we allow them to enter our mind. It's natural. I'm absolutely certain that it's natural for bad thoughts to enter people's minds. We're human, and we're man, we're earthly, finite beings, and all we consider most of the time is what we can see, touch, and feel at that moment, But there's so much more. There's so much more to it. And when our perspective changes, when our point of view or what we concentrate on changes, and we are able to manage those changes. And what I mean by that is when God gives us enough strength that we can learn to focus on Him instead of focusing on those memories or those failures of the past, or even those things that are going on right now. Because, like I said, most of us are caught up in right the here and the now, And it's very important that we understand that, these things are important, as far as surviving this planet, and our stay here, and the environment that we are able to survive it in. All these things that we fight for and struggle for. As long as you're here, they're important, to all of us, not just me, but to you too, I'm sure. But the things that I went through, the period of time that I went through, stripped all that away, Gosh, I lived my life completely by my image, and I projected the image. And to be honest with you, it took me a long way. But it was almost like my whole life was a performance. When I was a kid, I was the evangelist's son, the middle one, the one that didn't get up on stage and sing and stuff like that. Usually I had a little girlfriend back there somewhere. But with the way Daddy traveled, I had to change. I had fallen in love real quick, and I had to be able to let go real quick, because we were out of there, you know, after about 2 weeks, sometime 3, 4. Boy, that takes me back. Sorry. But anyway, I've had to see how I get caught on a memory. You know, I started, when I told you I was one of 7 children traveling. My dad was the evangelist, you know, and we all had to dress up, and we had to act right. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, thank you, ma'am, please, etc. And to me, you know, I heard Daddy preaching thousands of times. I said, Charlie, stop. Thousands of times I heard Daddy preach. And to a point that most of the time I could tell you what he was going to say next, you know. So with that repetition, and my mom read the Bible. Man, she read it. She read it all day pretty much, you know. And there was hardly a time I'd go in her house that she wouldn't have that little Bible in her lap. And it was all wrinkled, all up, you know, marked up. But it came from those tears that come out of my mama's eyes, you know. And she stayed in touch with God, you know. At the time, you know, I just said, boy, she was precious and best woman I ever knew. Of course, we all think that about Mama, but anyway, honestly, I thought she was just simple. You know, she'd come up in a different world, and she was just simple. But you know what? Now I'm understanding. Man, my mama entered into that secret place of the Most High God years ago. And, you know, it didn't just come to Mama haphazardly. From her going to church on Sundays and on Wednesdays, and a Bible study or 2, and, you know, volunteering a little bit here. No. That ain't even almost what it was all about. See, Mama spent time in the presence of God, see. And, you know, I saw things happen then that I thought Daddy was kind of hustling around making it happen. But now I look back, man, the things that I saw happen in my parents' life, and as we traveled, you know, there's no doubt that my daddy was a man of faith, you know, and that he listened to God and he heard God. And, you know, half the time with my little old crazy mind, you know, I viewed it different. I was viewing it through different eyes. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that I was viewing it through the same eyes that the world views that sort of thing through now. You know, I've noticed, and I'm around a lot. You know, I go downtown a lot. You know, here in Fayetteville and Spring Lake over in the park, and there's homeless communities everywhere. And when I say homeless communities, I want you to understand, I'm not talking about derelicts that lay there nasty and never take. I'm not talking. Of course, I'd feed them, help them too, but what I'm seeing more and more and more are just families. You know, they were over obligated when things hit. They were already living a little beyond their budget, and then all of a sudden, food doubles, gas doubles, everything doubles, and 2 or 3 other things happen, extenuating circumstances, and then boom, all of a sudden, they find themselves in a place that they never thought they would be. Living in the streets, living under bridges, and wherever they can park their car as long as their car runs. But understand, it takes money to do that too. And that's a deep rabbit hole for me to go down right there. But anyway, I think I was conditioned almost. My dad preached with people in those days that were, you know, the spiritual giants of that day. You know, like A.A. Allen, W.V. Grant, Bob Shambach. One of the earliest memories, you know, I have lots of memories under those tents as a baby, even as a little boy, crawling in the shavings. And I got loose in Greensboro, I think it was. Yeah. I was crawling in them dang shavings, and next thing I know, somebody grabbed me up, and I'm sitting up there on a bench beside of David Davison. He was the organist for A. Allen, and not many people will know about this, but boy, you're talking about an organist, dude. Wow. So I saw all kind of stuff, you know, and it seems like that some way I've just always been in the right place at the right time, because I've met a lot of people, you know, and I'll maybe tell a story someday. But anyway, as a young guy, I was successful, and when I was 17 years old, I was a top salesman in the dealership, you know, and by the time I was 23, I was running the dealership. And, you know, I always did understand it was God. I always really attribute it to my mama's prayers, because, you know, I know she prayed all day, every day. And I'm sure I was about every seventh thing she prayed for, because she had 7 children still living. And living that success ruined me spiritually. Now, that's probably the first time that I've ever had those words come out of my mouth, but I'm just telling you the way it is. You know, while I was working, I was real involved in the church. I read my Bible, dude. I read my Bible every day. You know, I made it a habit, and I set aside a time, because my faith was so weak, and I understood that the way I could build that faith was through the Word of God, because the Bible says faith comes by hearing, hearing comes by the Word of God. And I stuffed it inside of me. I mean, you know, it started an hour in the mornings, and then went to 2 hours, then went to 3 hours. 3 hours I'd have to set aside. And part of that was I met so many people, knew so many people. And if I told you I was going to pray for you, I did. And I'd write it down in my legal pad. It's so full of names, you know. But I was trying my best, to be honest with you, to do all the right things. I was trying my best, you know. I was probably trying harder than a Jehovah's Witness knocking on doors to earn my way, you know, because I knew I was edgy. You know, I was in a business, man, that 8 out of 10 of the people I worked with were liars. It's very rare. It's very rare in that business that I came up in to meet anybody that was really honest. Now, I did meet some guys in there, though. You know, I did meet some guys when I was in that business. I didn't hang with the normal car salesman crowd. I never did have a whole lot in common with them. I did for a little while. Wound up, I was drinking every night, and got to where I was wanting to drink every night. And I said, no, I can't be doing that. Boy, those memories. But anyway, I felt like, yeah, I was reading the Bible. I read it through, all the way through 1 year. But I still had some time. So next year, I simultaneously read 2 different translations. And I did that in a year, you know. And it was great. And I got hungry to know more about it. So I got another translation, you know. And more than 40 times, you know, I read it through. And I want you to bear in mind, this was just before my world was absolutely nuked, blown up. I can't even describe how it all happened, you know. But it happened, and it happened all at one time, you know. I wasn't expecting it. I had taken a stand. I had worked at a big Ford store I worked there for 8.5 years. And I'm not going to call any names, because it's not important. But it was an answer to prayer. And when I went there, the guy that owned it was a Christian guy. He was a real Christian guy, you know. He really had a heart, and he had worked hard, gone through failures and some tough times. But I'm convinced today that God sent me there. And when I arrived, there was some 200 and some vehicles a month, and that was, you know, it was a pretty good sized little store. And within a year, we had gone over 700. Then another year, we bumped 1,000. That's retail, one-on-one, belly to belly. And it was brutal. We had to be in a sales meeting at 9:15. And I worked till closing. If you were late, it cost you $500. But anyway, the money was unbelievable because, you know, the bonuses that the man set for us, 100% of the time we hit them. We never missed a single one. And as a matter of fact, after 3 or 4 years, you know, of hitting your bonuses every month, I mean, it was a big thing for us to sit down at the beginning of the month and hear what our bonus was going to be that month. It put some fire under us, and we were tired already. But then one day, when the money was pouring in, it was like a printing press. A meeting was called, and we were informed that we were making too much money, and that our bonuses were going to go away. And you know what, we could push the needle. All we had to do was just get it up a little bit more and do more. And it was already the second highest volume in the world, So, you know, how much more could you push? So, you know, we all started sort of, you know, nobody said anything right then. Everybody was all high-fived, you know, because whoever was leading the meeting, you know, did all that hocus-pocus crap. But, you know, as we left, as things go, we wound up sort of gathering, you know. One guy woke up, so what do you think about that? You know, of course, at that moment, you're going to give your opinion. And honestly, that's when the glue that held that team of guys together started coming unglued. But what really pushed the button was, all of a sudden, the guy that we worked for developed a passion for expensive classic automobiles. And he would buy one, he'd bring it in for us all to gather around and look at. Boy, he bought some pretty stuff. Gosh, he bought some pretty stuff. One-ofs, Camaros with 2,800 miles, stuff like that from the 60s and 70s. Real high-dollar stuff. And we'd all go out, we'd enjoy them, and he'd start putting them in the showroom, you know. And got really involved in it. But, you know, there wasn't a single one of those 10 guys that had brought that lady to the dance, that every time they saw that thing come in, the same thought entered their minds. That's our bonus right there. You see all these cars right here? That's our bonus. See? And that was kind of what started happening. Well, along about that time, one of my customers, a really good customer, one of the nicest people I'd ever met. Very, very sharp guy, gentle, well-spoken, sharp as a tack from top to bottom. He wore hair, wore hair to pay, and you almost couldn't tell it, except that it was about 8 times thicker than it should have been for his age, you know. But other than that, he spent money on it. You couldn't tell it. But anyway, he bought a car from me, and then bought another one, and bought 2 more, and he owned nursing homes and health care stuff all over the country. And he started inviting me and my then wife. I think the first thing was they invited us over their house for dinner. And this was a little different world for me, because where he lives, you come in onto his place, and the driveway went in between a cow pasture and a big pond. There were 2 swans there swimming in that pond. And there was a house off to the left. It's a pretty nice house. I found out later it's where the servant or whatever he is there, the attendant or something, tends the place, you know. It's that kind of place. And you go way down that driveway, and it was gravel, and then you enter a concrete driveway with posts up, and really, 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 really fine place, man, and tastefully done, and the whole 9 yards. And you have never entered into a place and been treated more hospitable, you know, and kind and happy you're there, and all of that stuff. And they cooked together, and it was a beautiful meal and a beautiful time. And of course they brought out the wine, and I wasn't a real big drinker at the time, but you know, you sitting there eating a couple $100 worth of this guy's food, their food, and enjoying this, you know, yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, I'll try it. And at first it tasted pretty nasty, you know, to be honest with you. But they, you know, they'd sip it and, you know, swish it around their mouth and slurp it and all that, you know, and talk about what they tasted. And good God, I've heard everything from chocolate to roses to, you know, all kinds of stuff. You know, so I reckon that was. And so I said, well, you know what? Let me try another, because I didn't smell nothing. But anyway, it was. And then a few weeks later, he called and said, hey, man, he said, me and, he called her name, are going to Florida this weekend. They had a place over on whatever island it is. They're pretty exclusive island, and they're close to Alligator Alley, not too far from that, but on the Gulf Coast. And they had a place over on the East Coast too, in a high-rise. He said, me and Deborah going down this weekend, and he said, we're gonna probably leave Friday, something like that, and come back Monday or Tuesday, and I'd like for you and your ex, called her name, to go with us. And so, you know, you know, what can I say? You know, I had time, and you know, I had time off. I could do sort of what I wanted to. And he said, I'll handle everything. So they bought tickets, and we flew together and went down. He had airplanes, but with that many people and that much, you know, that much stuff, I don't know why. And then you got to have somebody fly it, because he wasn't a pilot. But anyway, we flew commercial, and everything was first class, man. And he had bought a new car for each place he had. One up in Limbo Ridge, one down Emerald Isle, one down in whatever that island is, can't even think of it, in Florida, and one in over on, I think it was Miami Beach, something like that. It was a high-rise, a high dollar too. But anyway, we went, and it was great. It was great. I mean, just great. And then another time, you know, and we had a great time, met a lot of their friends, you know, hung out with the people that they knew at the club and different stuff like that. And, you know, it was enjoyable. Unfortunately, these people drink a lot, you know, so I drank more than I should have. And, but That's another life. That's another me that I'm talking about. Remember that. But anyway, first one thing led to another. We'd get together. He'd come over to my house on Sunday and pick me up, or I'd go over there, whatever, running. And then one day, he said, "Tom, have you ever thought about your own dealership again?" And I really hadn't, because I liked working for somebody else, and just getting the job done and making money and not having all the hassle that goes with it. And for me, I've always loved to do it, and I know how to do it, know how to make money and how to make that business spin. Just simply because I grew up in it. I know it like I know the back of my hand, But the financial end, I hate. The detail stuff, I hate it. Can I do it? Of course I can. I just don't want to. I just can't fix my mind on it. I hate doing it so bad. Well, this guy was a CPA. So that really gave me, stop Charlie, now don't make a mess there. That really gave me a comfort level that I hadn't had before, because I'd gone through a couple partnerships, and both times, just because I didn't pay attention to the financial end and my partners did, bottom line, I got screwed. But that's all right. It's life. I did it again too. But anyway, I was very comfortable with it and with the situation. And he said, "Well, Tom, let me tell you something. If you find a dealership that you want, I'll buy it. And we'll just be partners in it." And I said, "You really want to own a dealership with me?" He said, "No, I don't want to own a dealership with you, Tom. I want to own 10 dealerships with you." Well, this is a guy that already had multiple nursing homes and physical therapy, in-home health companies and medical device companies, and on and on and on, And so obviously he had the money to back up his talk, and that was pretty rare. You got a lot of high rollers that talk. "Oh yeah, man, you find something I'll do," and you go to them. They were just talking, trying to impress somebody or impress you. They could do it. They really couldn't. That's pretty typical. So anyway, I had made really, really, really good friends with the regional manager for Motor Company. She was more like a sister to me, man. I really thought a lot of her. I don't mean I was in love with her, and there was never anything outside of that sister, brother, friend kind of thing with she and I. We went out to eat with my ex and her husband. We weren't ex at the time, but anyway, I really thought a lot of Kathy, and Kathy had a lot of pull within Ford. So I talked to her, and she told me about a dealership that was nearby, not too far outside of Raleigh. And it had been in the Ford's dealer minority program that they had at one time, and I think it was like 10% of the dealerships, or some certain percentage of the dealerships, had to be operated by African American minority. Every once in a while an Egyptian or something slipped through, but it's pretty much, for African American to sort of even the sled or something from the trauma that they experienced by what happened to their relatives 200 years ago, whenever that was, and it ain't off of them yet, so, or hadn't, whatever, got out of the bloodline. I don't know what they're waiting on, or why they still were paying it, but, whatever, that's what they were doing, and I really think that Ford did that to keep people like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and them kind of people from, pointing a finger at them and hurting their business. It's sort of a you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours kind of thing. But those stores had lost so much money, almost I guarantee you there was at least an 80% failure rate. Why? Because the only criteria for putting a person in there was the color of their skin, pretty much. You know, it don't work that way. I don't care if you're purple. You know, you still got to know what the heck you're doing if you're going to make it a success. And that was their downfall. But it played into my hands, and it was something I could just steal. And the guy that was in it was getting out, and he had acquired a bunch of them under that program, and he was cashing in, is basically what it amounted to. And this was a little dealership he didn't want nothing to do with. And so for a song and a dance almost, we bought it. And it had sit there and struggled. It had never sold over 30 or 40 cars in 1 month. And the first month after we bought it, I went on in there before we got all the agreement with Ford. In the first month, we sold 150 retail units. Got everybody's attention. But it sort of made some enemies too. From that time on, Charlie, dang it, you're knocking my daggone water over. What's wrong with you? From that time on, though, I was blackballed by the people that I had worked for. They wouldn't deal or trade with us. They wouldn't, they were mad. Of course, he had a $1 zillion store, and by that time, several others, and, you know, it made him mad that I got one, I guess, you know. But anyway, he had a lot of pull with Ford, and didn't use it for me. You know, it would have been a one phone call thing, really, but the way everything went down. But anyway, Harold started, you know, was pushing it. He was serious. I'd found this store. I went in there and did it, and went in under a management contract because Ford approval and processing everything is a 2 or 3 month thing usually. They can speed it up, but usually they have to do all kind of analysis and market things and all kind of stuff, and then set your objectives and, you know, what they expect for you and all of that. So it takes time, but we needed some money. All of a sudden, you know, Harold didn't have any cash, he said. Cash flow. As a matter of fact, within, oops, I said his name, I'm sorry. It don't matter. Within weeks, my new dealership was writing checks to Harold to put in one of his companies so that when he applied for a loan from the bank, the financial statement would appear stronger. Well, that's fraud. And I don't do fraud. But I noted it, you know, right then. I noted it. And then as we progressed on, I bought the building. Bought it for song and dance. It was unbelievable what I bought it for. But Harold wanted to roll a bunch of stuff into the real estate loan. He wanted his capital investment, which is supposed to be unencumbered funds. He wanted to do everything. He wanted to mix it up. Well, you know, that wasn't right. You don't do that. And but I still, you know, I'm in this deal, and, you know, I got to keep running with it, and, you know, but the bloom was falling off the rose for me. I don't care how many cars we were selling, because I'm not going to handle anything in a dishonest fashion. Well, anyway, with everything that he wanted to borrow, the building wasn't going to appraise, I was pretty sure, because it was substantially more than I had paid for it. It was like twice more than what I had paid for it. And I just, and I said, Harold, that bill, he said, that building's not going to appraise. He said, don't worry about that, I got it. He said, I have an appraiser. I know how to do it. So he hooked up this appraiser who appraised it for quite a bit more money than it was actually worth at the time. And come to find out, that's pretty much, that was his game. That's how he had all this stuff. You know, he'd kite one place to the next, to the next, to the next. And as we went into those homes, like the one up in Linville Ridge, you go in there, and it looked like somebody was living in it yesterday, except maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Everything in it was like everybody in there died or something, you know, because the magazines, they weren't to them. They weren't addressed to them. There's hundreds of them. There was mail there that was addressed to somebody else in the place, and it was the same in the other ones, you know. And you know, something just wasn't right, you know. But here again, like I said, I'm in this deal. He's not working with me every day. You know, I can keep my eye on it. I don't trust him, you know, anymore at all. But anyway, that's the way it goes. Well, we opened another place, not too far from there. And actually, it was beside of the Ford place in Sanford. And my reasoning for wanting to go there, it was expensive. If I'm not mistaken, I paid that old guy $10,500 a month for that strip, and then we spent about $500,000 or more on it. Because that Ford store was another minority point. It was struggling. Everybody knew it was struggling. The guy was a doofus that was in there, and it was another one of those things. They chose him not because of his skills, but because of his race. You know, I mean, that's just what it amounts to. You know, it sounds, I don't even know how else to say it. That's just the truth the way it was. But anyway, I felt like if I could get there and open a place to sell all of our trade-ins right there beside of them, then there's a good chance, you know, when that deal bit the dust, that I could get it. And we went down there, and we hit the ground running down there too. And you know, things were rolling pretty good. And sure, and then I approached Ford about that dealership. And by this time, the dealership was out of trust, and they had people in there taking all the money and opening all the mail and this and that. You know, took control of it pretty much. So it was in that kind of situation, and Ford had already seen I could take that dealership down there and put together a team that could push it from just insignificance to over 100 a month pretty consistently, and make good money. And so I had a conversation with the people at Ford, and they told me, the person I talked to, I got their name in there, and really got the conversation too. I recorded everything, but just flat told me, yes, we will give you that dealership. I mean, we will approve you at that dealership. But at the time, they were in the deproliferation mode. They were closing dealerships. They wanted fewer dealerships. And they said, we'll give you that. We'll let you have that dealership, but you got to close Lillington. Well, now I didn't trust Harold as far as I could throw him, but I'd made a commitment to him. And I could have done that day. I could have done that deal. I could have closed. I mean, I could have they would have pulled the Ford franchise out of Lillington, and then expanded the ADI of the Sanford store to include that area down in there, and it would have worked. It would have worked. A lot of room for expansion. It would just flat work, you know. But I couldn't do that to him. I couldn't do that to him. I wasn't going to do to him what he did to everybody else. So I didn't do it. Somebody else bought it, wound up. The guy I used to work for bought it. And, you know, that's just the way pickles squirt. But anyway, let me get back on track a little bit. With Kathy Burns had pushed Ford to get this money. And it wasn't huge, like $600,000. And or maybe $800,000, and she had pushed them to get it done. And she was my friend. She knew what the situation was. I need cash, operating cash, really, because Harold, he had sucked everything out of it. And anyway, she pushed and she got it done. And she came with the paperwork and the check. And Harold, had to be there because he had to sign too. And Kathy had everything in her hand. She had everything. The check too. And she said, now Harold, there's only one thing. Your investment your cash investment in the dealership is required to be unencumbered funds. But you have placed a personal UCC filing. A UCC filing encompasses everything in the dealership. And, Ford will do this loan contingent upon you releasing those filings. And Harold said, oh, yeah, of course I will. And that was it. So Kathy went ahead and did the deal, and she gave me the check. Well, Harold didn't release them. He didn't release those filings. And I went to him and I said, Harold, you told Kathy you'd release those UCC filings. And he said, F Kathy. I said, what? He said, doesn't matter. We got the money. I'm not releasing that. I knew that moment I was in a bed with the devil. Boy, it made me as angry as anything, that I'd ever encountered, I reckon. And I tell it like it is. I stood my ground. I was supposed to have position in the store. I was appointed by Ford as the dealer of that location, of that point. Harold was not even on the dealer agreement at all, And I owned 50% of the stock. And, from what I thought, my position, my footing was sure. That was my understanding, you see. And even my mentor, and the guy that was like a dad to me for years, was in the business. And he said, you got all the power in the world. He said, as long as you are the dealer, it doesn't matter. I said, but I only own 50%. He said, doesn't matter if you own 3%. If you're the dealer, you got all the power. So I operated under that assumption, and I stood my ground pretty firm. And I told Harold, his brother is a CPA too. Both of them crooked in my opinion, crooked is a snake, sbout, and twice as deadly. But so, and you know what, he was a liar too, so I just went to Harold and I said, look, we're in this deal together, but some things got to change. And he said, what do you mean? I said, Harold, you're a liar. You don't tell the truth. You lied to Kathy. You lied to her. And then I started calling out other things. I said, you just don't tell the truth. And I said, I don't want your brother handling the books for this place. He said, why not? I said, because he's a liar too. Well, you know what, I probably wouldn't have done that, except that I thought my position was secure. That highly pissed him off, and pissed his wife off worse, and boy, what a nasty pair. And anyway, they come after me, and the first thing they did was fired my son-in-law, who had done a great job, good enough that Harold had given him a $15,000 Christmas bonus a few months before without even asking me, and that kind of ticked me off. But anyway, he fired him. At the time, his wife had breast cancer. She was being treated for it. They canceled her health insurance. And then they started accusing me of things, not even an element of truth in it, but they had money. And I quickly spent all the money I had, cash, because I put everything. I had maybe 100 or 2,000 or something, I don't even know. But it was all sucked up by attorneys who lied unceasingly and who were all in cahoots with each other. They refer you, if you're in this deal, then, well, you need to do this, and they refer you to Jackleg over here, and they pass the money up the chain or something, and it passes all around. It goes to the judge. He gets his cut. I watched it. I mean, I know how. I mean, I see how it operates. And but anyway, it disassembled my life completely. So, after all those years, of reading the Bible and praying, all of a sudden, to be honest with you, I felt like I'd wasted all that, because surely to goodness, man, if there was anything to that, in my thinking now, this is the way I was thinking, if there's anything to that, if it was really real, I paid my tithes, I helped people every chance I get. I've supported my mom. I supported my mom and dad till the day they died. I didn't disrespect. I just went on and on and on. So, if God would let this happen, something's wrong. Something's wrong. That's the way I saw it, So, I kind of lost hope. And, boy, that's the simple part of the story that I've told you so far. But to be quite honest with you, and I've told you this, I'm not this guy that I'm talking about anymore. But with the kind of memory that I have, it's like when I start recalling those things, man, I recall the emotions too. And boy, it's pretty tough to get through emotionally in a way, But thank God I've been set free from all that crap, or from even thinking about it or worrying about it. I'm just going to share it with you in detail, from start to finish, a little bit at a time, because I know that the struggles that I have gone through and the battles that I've gone through, they're not unique to me. These battles are, and even rougher ones, are being waged every day. And millions, probably hundreds of millions of people's lives across the world. And hopefully, I can share these events in a detail that you can relate to, and share the lesson that I learned from it. So maybe, since I've already gone that trail, if you're in the midst of that trail right now, if your world's coming apart, if you got somebody coming after you or whatever, take heart, and just follow me through this. It's deep and it's dark and complex and convoluted, but the end result is I'm set free. All that stuff's gone. I don't even think about it anymore, except I think about it in terms of how amazed I am at the change that God has brought about in me. I'm a new creature. I'm a brand new creature. I've heard it all my life. But I'm a new creature, a new creation. All of that has passed away. See, everything has become new. Everything. And when I say everything, it's right on down to my health. I was diabetic, taking 100 units of insulin in my stomach a day, full metformin. My kidneys were underperforming. I was in a mess. This past week, just about every day, I was out in the parks. I was out here and there. I walk Charlie. I do the work around here. I don't even check my sugar anymore. See, I've been set free from that. And God has taught me. I've been by myself, man, by myself. But God has taught me during that time. He's taught me that it's what I put into my body that brings the illnesses on most of the time. Just the same way that putting filth into your spirit all the time will create havoc in your life. It's the same with your body. So, I believe that God will lead us as we follow him and stay connected to him. You can't, he's not an electric vehicle. You can't go in there on Sunday and plug him in for a few hours. Maybe stop by there on Wednesday night and plug him in for a little bit more. And really, have the power to make it through life. See, can you imagine if I had an invisible cord and you could plug that sucker in and just keep on going? Well, that's the way God's power is. The supply never diminishes, see? And even to the point that when we get at our weakest, that's when he's the strongest, see? And it evens out the field. So, I sort of took you up to, or did a little bit of an overview of what happened, but I'm going to dig on down and go in detail a little bit. I witnessed a lot of things, I should have spoke up then. He'd probably been in jail till he died, for the stuff that I know about him. And but I didn't do it. And to be honest with you, I hated him. I hated her. I hated him. With all my heart, I hated him. And there were a couple other guys there that I had trusted more than anything at one time. Both of them stabbed me square in the back. Boy, it hurt me more ways than you can even imagine. It hurt me. And then, to be honest with you, honest to God, I purposed in my heart that I was going to kill them. They destroyed my life, and I wanted to watch them die. And I'm really ashamed to say that. I can't even believe I felt that way. But I'm giving you an example of how disaster striking from multiple directions in your life, and you trying to react to it in the natural, you're going to kill somebody. And anyway, I'm not making an excuse for it. I'm just telling the story. And lots of gaps to fill in that I'm going to fill in. But for now, I just want to skip ahead. After that happened, really during that time, my marriage really wasn't all that good. It was good as long as things was going good, but, it really wasn't that good. And we became divided, really. I didn't want to hear it. I'm sure she was disappointed, whatever. It wasn't that good. And so I pulled away, and we lived in the same house there for several years, but not a lot of communication. And during that time, the children sort of drifted away. Who knows why? They'll tell it one way. I see it another, but for whatever reason, they wound up going away, and it almost killed me. I would text one of my kids today. They'd see it, because it would show right there, seen. Never hear back. Never hear back. And the other one, I have no idea why she got so mad. Except that, they didn't know me. They didn't know anything except for what they'd been told. But I loved them, more than I can even, tell you. But anyway, it was painful. Every day of my life, it was painful. I lived with it. I would, man, it was so long I didn't have anybody, nobody. Friends that I had done favor after favor after favor after favor after favor. Crickets. As a matter of fact, not just crickets, but avoidance. These are Christian people. If you talk to them today, it's hallelujah, praise God, everything's great. But you know what Jesus said? Jesus said that if you say you love me, or you say you love God, who you can't even see, and you don't love your neighbor, who you can see and treat them that way, you're a liar. So you can make your own, assumption there, but it hurt me terribly. It hurt me. And I had a couple of friends, one in particular, that, man, he did a lot for me, Rod. He did a lot for me during that time. He lives 100 miles away, and he has his own life, and his own business, and blah, 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 blah. So I understand that. I'm not talking about him, though. But anyway, I hated it. But I spent hours and hours and hours thinking about it and praying. I started praying. It was the only place I had to turn. And I started realizing the fact of the matter is, I thought that God had forgotten me, or that I had approached him the wrong way, or whatever. And that's the reason he didn't answer my prayer, and that's the reason he didn't keep his stuff from happening. But I had one prayer that I had prayed repeatedly, time and time again. Every day I prayed, I would pray. First thing, Father, please help me to learn to trust in you with all of my heart. Father, help me not to lean on my own understanding, but in everything I do, Father, help me acknowledge you, because I know if I do that, you'll direct my footsteps. And guess what? Guess what I learned during that time? I learned that God does answer prayer. The prayer that I had prayed to him thousands of times. Father, please, please help me to learn to trust you with all of my heart. Guess what? The only way that I could have ever learned, truly learned, to trust God with all of my heart was to get to a point. There was not anything, anybody that I could trust. Yeah, he answered my prayer. And the next thing I prayed was, Father, help me not to lean on my own understanding. Help me to learn not to lean on my own understanding. Well, you know what? Everything that I'm describing to you and then some wasn't supposed to happen. I leaned on my own understanding and my resources. See, everything was nailed down. I was secure. Don't lean on your own understanding, you see. So, and not just that, other things that I was involved in. It's supposed to work. I could trust this person. None of it worked, see, all of a sudden. Through these new eyes, looking back, once again, I see, yeah, he answered my prayer. Things had to get so screwed up and so far out of my understanding of things that I wouldn't lean on it, see. Wow. Boy, what a powerful moment that was. That was a huge, huge boost of my faith, Yeah, in spite of me. I didn't know what I was praying. I didn't know what I was asking for. I didn't have a clue. But my Father answered me. And guess what? Today I do trust him with all of my heart. I don't try to lean on my own understanding. Every time I do, it don't go right. I just let him direct it. Open doors, I walk in, And I absolutely acknowledge him in everything I do. And since I've been doing that, he's directed my path. See, he's leading me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. He's restored my soul. Dude, He's leading me right now beside still waters and calm waters. Old Charlie laying over there, he's just happy as a clam, you know. So yeah, he restored my soul. And you know what I'm assured of? And that is that surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the rest of the days of my life. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord, in the secret place of the Most High God, forever. Hey, thanks for listening. I don't even know if I'll post it or not, but boy, it sure was good to get some stuff out. God bless you. Love you. See you soon.